And that's the game that's going on. Every single country in the world, their central banks have a fiat currency system. There are no countries that trade in gold and silver coin.
Well, at least at a casino, it's 60-40, 70-30, 55-45, and of course that's a total scam. But I mean, this is a casino where there's no way to win unless you're an insider.
You cannot win, and they have imposed this on the entire world, and that's the way they're going to move their one world government forward, is through the currency.
You know, I had Walter Berry on a few days ago, and I've looked at all his documents. Even the former comptroller of the Air Force says it's true. And the government investments, and this is off budget, as you know, but for the listeners, the government investments and just cream, you know, in the black, extra money that they don't even discuss, every year is almost triple the entire GDP of the American people now. I mean, it's off the charts, la land. He said now, I had him on a few years ago, it was up at 75% that they owned. And this is corporations and government merging. Now he says it's 83%. In just a few more years, they're going to own everything.
Right. And every time they issue more credit into the worldwide system, it dilutes the purchasing power of the credit instruments that are already in circulation, and that's a tax on the people, and it's a way to enslave the people.
I mean, you're a middle-class guy. Would you rather have Bush's 6% on average tax cut? I don't know what bracket you're in, but let's say 6% for somebody in the middle income. Would you rather, and I want you to answer this after the break, would you rather have that 6% cut, or would you rather have your dollar not be devalued by 44%? So I want to get your answer on that when we get back. And then let's get into the Bretton Woods Agreement and how this is all set up and what you think geopolitically is going on, because we had this global agreement to not dump the dollar, but now we see a rebellion, or is it staged? You know, your opinion, why are people moving away from the dollar? Why is it in free fall? And why does Bush say that's good? We'll be right back with Bill Veith. Welcome back. Your calls are coming up. Bill Veith, psychologist, good friend of mine, local Austinite, activist, joins us. You've done a lot of studying on the agreements that were made about how to set up the world financial system right after World War II, and then again they had meetings in the 80s, and now it seems that that old order is breaking up. Give us your take on it historically, walk us through it, and then, but first off, answer that question. Would you rather have a 6% tax cut or have your dollar not be devalued by 40+%?
No question, I'd rather not have the dollar devalued.
Because that's a net loss of your wealth of 39%.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the history of fiat currency shows that every single one in history eventually reaches its intrinsic value, which is zero. And there's not one exception. And there's no reason to think that the United States dollar would be an exception to that rule.
They're debasing it. And once it starts its plunge, it never stops. Gold hitting $640 an ounce yesterday, going back down to 638. Oil going above $74 a barrel crude. Comments on that?
Well, those are not. That's not gold going up or oil going up. That's the purchasing power of the dollar going down. It just takes, as they dilute the credit into the system, it takes more of those pieces of paper to purchase the same items. That if you look at them against each other, they're not changing in value.
The only person I heard in mainstream media to tell the truth on this was John Stossel. They locally on KLBJ, they air his reports sometimes, and there he was admitting it. But he was acting like it was okay then. No, it's not okay.
No, it's not okay, and I think, you know, again, we should not adopt the language of the globalists. And see, I make a distinction between the word value and the word purchasing power. Values don't change. The value of an inch doesn't change. The value of a dollar doesn't change. It's 371.25 grains of silver. But the purchasing power of the fiat dollar changes minute to minute.
Second to second on the mercantile exchange.
Right.
No, I mean, you're right. I agree with you. So get into the history of some of this for people.
Starting about what year would you like me to start?
Wherever you'd like.
Well, you know, right from the beginning, from the adoption of the Constitution, the central bankers from Europe had always been trying to impose a central banking system of paper credit into the society, and the founding fathers knew what that, you know, would entail. So they gave certain powers to the Congress and said that Congress had the power to coin money, and money was defined basically as gold and silver coin. And Congress was prohibited from emitting bills of credit, which is what we have now. And so there was always this pressure right from the beginning to establish a central bank where they could impose bills of credit on us and get away from an honest monetary system. So it went through several machinations over time, and then the Federal Reserve came into existence in 1913, and that was the beginning of the end. But the first 20 years of the Federal Reserve, those pieces of paper, those dollars, were redeemable on demand for gold or silver coin. After, in 1933, as we know, the Roosevelt came in and basically stole the money from the people by making them turn in their gold to the central banks.
And a lot of people, when they hear this, email me and say that's not true. I've talked to my grandmother. It's part of the public record that in 1933, he got into office. He said, turn all your gold in. Then once he got the gold overnight, he said, we're allowed to sell it to Europe. They basically gave it to Europe, right. And then overnight they doubled the price.
Right. And, you know, actually, most of the gold had already been turned in because people would take their gold to the central banks and get these receipts for the gold, which we call dollars, believing that those receipts, those pieces of paper, would be redeemable on demand. And they were for 20 years. And so as people began to realize, hey, this is pretty good. Every time I take my paper in, I'm given gold or silver, they would take more gold down to store. And so once the central banks had most of the gold, that's when they stole it.
The U.S. government, folks, outlawed gold, openly shipped it to Europe. They would arrest you if you didn't turn your gold in. And I understand that. And they gave you paper back.
Right. And, you know, the Constitution says only gold and silver coin is money. So they literally stole the money from the people. Okay, but they didn't do it with silver. Silver was still, so we've always had a bimetallic, we've always had a silver standard. The silver dollar is the unit of account. We've never been on a gold standard. For a while, we were on kind of a statutory gold standard for 5 years between 1873 and 1878, but we went off of that. But our standard for the monetary system is silver. It always was, and it still is constitutionally. So up until 1968, people could still turn in their dollars, theoretically, and get silver coin. That stopped in 68. And then want me to finish when we come back?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And then we can also go back and talk about Kennedy in 63 tries to issue 40-something billion in greenbacks. He gets $4 billion out before they blow his head off. And you can still find those $5 bills that don't say Federal Reserve. They have a red stamp, and it says Lincoln greenback, which I guess would be redeemable in silver, but they weren't about to allow that to happen. Stay with us. Bill Veith, our guest. This is so important to your financial future. You're not going to hear this anywhere else in mainstream media. The Trilateral Commission, founded in 1973 by Zygmunt Brzezinski, David Rockefeller, and others, is a global consortium of top economics experts who try to work in concert to bring into fruition the global economy. And they've said that they're going to have an Asian Union, an American Union, a European Union. They're going to play those currencies off against each other and then convince the people that they need a global currency. And they're now openly discussing this year at the Davos, Switzerland conference. They came out and said, well, we'll also have our currencies in a few years, but they'll all be at a global benchmark to stop this wild fluctuation. And then that will give them global control to then, in a unified way, manipulate the currencies and debase them even further, robbing us of the value of our daily work and the energies that we expend. And simultaneously, you see a move to destroy property rights, where in kind of an imperial way, the government says if some local robber baron wants your property, he can take it. What they don't tell you about the New London, Connecticut case is they're not even paying people tax value. They're paying them condemned value in many cases, or nothing at all if they resist. So similar to the riots we see in China as the farmers refuse to have their land stolen, these peasants, it's happening here in America, and we're just rolling over for it because we just can't get that it can actually happen here.